Charles Dickens was born on February 7, 1812 in Portsmouth, England, United Kingdom. Unfortunately, on June 9, 1870, Dickens was found died of stroke in Kent, England, leaving his final novel unfinished, which is The Mystery of Edwin Drood. A Tale of Two Cities was published by Chapman and Hall, and it was written in London. The book was first published in Weekly Serial April 20, 1859 and November 26, 1859. The major theme of this novel were actually to tell us about the chronic possibility of revival, the necessity of sacrifice, the tendency toward violence, and also the oppression and revolutionaries. When we read this novel, we may find several conflicts of interest and clash of characters throughout the narrative. The conflict between the upper and lower classes results in revolution. The leading character or protagonist in this novel is Charles Denay and his wife, Miss Lucy Manette. On the other hand, the main antagonist figure is Madame Defarge. The major events of the plot are made to match with the historical events, such as the fall of the Bastille, the killing of Follin, and the Reign of Terror. In addition, the novel is divided into three books entitled Recall to Life, The Golden Thread, and The Track of the Storm. It covers approximately 18 years from 1775 to 1793. Thus, Dickens must weave the plot properly in order to hold the story together over such a long period of time.
According to classical model, the levels of output and employment are only determined by the supply factors, and the system says that the change of exogenous factors such as technology and population growth will lead to change in supply rather than demand. To relate with the novel, people in Saint Antoine prefer to spend more leisure time rather than spend time to work. This depicts in the graph of the supply of labor in Paris. The labor demand in Paris represents a low real wage compared to London. This will result in the lack of attractiveness for the citizen to supply labor. This will result in a low employment in the city of Paris, particularly in Saint Antoine. The consequence from that low employment is a much lower output from the economy of Paris compared to London.
On the other hand, the economy in London is more stable, that resulted in a higher real wage that will represent higher attractiveness. This will result in high employment in the economy of London from the resulted in high real wage. This will result in a high labor supply because of the high real wage that attracts labor supply, as in the case of Charles Denay, where he chose to work in London rather than in Paris where he was born. The labor market equilibrium in London is higher than in France. When the firm choose to supply more, the output and employment level will be higher, and this depicts in the graph where the difference can be seen as London has higher level compared to France. The resulted high employment turns into a high output of an economy, which relates to a better standard of living in London.
Based on the analysis made on the labour market, the output in the city of Paris is much lower than the output in London. As a result, the total output in the city of Paris is small. When we pair that with the classical aggregate demand, we can see that the price is very high in the city of Paris. In our opinion, in order to make some changes to the economy, we will use the ISLM curve to see the appropriate action that the government of Paris can do to correct or to curb the economic depression that France is suffering. When we construct the LM curve, we see that the money demand of the people in Paris depends on the transaction demand rather than on the speculative demand for money. This is because the people in Paris, household or business, are inelastic to the interest rate. Therefore, LM curve is vertical. On the other hand, for the IS curve, we can see from the novel the tax is high and the government spending is very low. Therefore, the IS curve is very steep. Combining IS and LM curves, we can see that there is very low output and very high interest rate. To correct this problem, assuming the price level is flexible and wage is fixed, the government should impose an expansionary monetary policy. It will increase the money supply in the money market, and this will in turn increase output based on the new intersection point between the ISLM curves. But to increase output in the aggregate demand and aggregate supply curve, price must increase and output will be reduced from the initial expected output to achieve equilibrium. We see that interest also increased to achieve equilibrium in the ISLM curve.
In the novel stated that the rulers of the state had not provided a safe environment to its people for trades to foster. Robberies were common and equality preserved in the society where the rich get richer and poor get poorer. There was no effective institution to preserve the well-being of the needy. This led to dissatisfaction of the society towards the ruler. In Islamic perspective, government and state institutions are responsible for strengthening the weak and providing sufficient means to the poor to enable them to meet their basic needs. Besides, they also take necessary steps to lower the wealth inequality between the poor and the rich in the society, and the government also responsible in protecting the rights of the poor, as they will be accountable and answerable to Allah for what they have done. In Islamic principles, the government should ensure that every person receive their share and maintain the spirit of fraternity, brotherhood, mutual love and cooperation among its members in order to eradicate poverty by elevating their conditions of living. The Holy Prophet has described this state of the Islamic society in these words: "In kindness, benevolence and mutual love and affection, the Muslim are like a body. When one of its parts feels any pain, then every part of the body, through sleeplessness and fever, shares its grief."
Based on this hadith, social cooperation is important in building the spirit of brotherhood in the society, and this can be achieved by effective allocative of surplus in resources among the poor. Through the obligatory payment of zakah, each rich members in the society should spend about 1/50 or 2.5% of their wealth to Baitul Mal as a form of worship, where it is distributed efficiently to the needy. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah At-Tawbah, verse 103, "Take alms, zakat, out of their property, thou wouldst cleanse them and purify them thereby." The Holy Prophet ﷺ explained this right of the poor by saying that all the riches and the luxuries of the wealthy are the product of the labor of the poor workers. In the novel, it is stated that the society were forced to pay the lump sum tax to the rulers and head of the institution. Lump sum tax hurts the poor more than the rich, as the tax were imposed even though they were barely meet ends meet. During the time of the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he always provided financial assistance to the needy and the poor from the Baitul Mal, employment to those who were able to work, and monetary help to those who were sick, invalid, and unable to do any work themselves. He even paid debts of the poor debtors who could not themselves repay it, and helped every poor and destitute who comes to him and asks for help. We know from the novel that unemployment will random because lack of trades and demand for goods in the market. With proper help from the Baitul Mal or financial institution, labor productivity in the market can be utilized.